who's going to be teaching us about varied instruction. And then Mr. Josh Hollingshead is going to teach us about differentiated instruction. So super uber important. So teacher Ms. Nobles, the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Just so you know, I have to switch between tabs a couple of times here so I can show you my videos with my audio and all of that good stuff. So can you see my full screen here?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So before I jump in, I want to just tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Katie Nobles, and I'm the marketing and communications instructor at Mahoning County Career and Technical Center in Valley STEM plus Me Too Academy. So what that means is I'm actually not teaching a full career tech course right now. So all of this information is really useful for me because I'm still in the process of learning. I was hired to launch a new program here at our school, marketing communications. So they got me in here and started me out teaching in our STEM school. So that's our 9th and 10th graders. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is actually what I'm teaching them. But STEM and CT have so many similarities, very hands-on, very real world. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of that background before I jump in. Also, just a quick note, you could probably tell my voice sounds a little bit hoarse. Excuse me, I might cough. I have my coffee and water here. My voice is just returning after taking a hiatus for a few days. So if I do stop or cough, that is why. So today I am going to teach you guys about varying instructional strategies, which was a word that 9 or 10 months ago, if you had asked me when I was a marketing director, I would have had no idea what it meant. But it is something that has been so important and so useful and something that I'm actually really passionate about now as an educator. So let's talk a little bit about what instructional strategies are. These are basically just tools and different methods that teachers use to really connect their students and get them engaged in the learning process. This is something that is so important for our students, right? To get them connected, learning, invested, excited, motivated, and instructional strategies are all different ways to do that. And the same thing doesn't work for every single student. Same thing isn't going to work for every class. So that's why learning about these instructional strategies are so important. But, you know, we say they're important, but why do they specifically matter in our classroom? As teachers, we are hired to teach and we are hired to get our students to learn, right? We are not paid or, you know, hired to be entertainers. We're not paid or hired to make them have fun in the classroom or to make something exciting for them. So why does it really matter if this is what we need to do? Why can't we just stand in front of the room and just talk and have them absorb our material? I want to show a little video and then we can get into a little bit of a discussion of that. So to do that, I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen and share a new tab with you. Okay.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics, voodoo economics.
US.
So why can't we just do that, right? I mean, those kids really looked really interested, super engaged, completely like they were absorbing and learning the material that the teacher was teaching, right? No, of course not. They're sitting there, they're falling asleep. No one's even listening to what they're saying. So that's why having these varying instructional strategies really does matter within our classroom, because no, we're not paid to entertain. We're not paid to make it fun, but we are paid to teach these kids and to get them to actually understand the material. And to do that, we have to use these strategies. We have to engage them. We have to excite them, and we have to really get them connected to the material. So before I get into a little bit of my spiel and what I'm going to talk about today, I want to ask all of you, what have you struggled with most while you're instructing in your classroom? And you guys can either share it in the chat. I would love if you would share it verbally, but I will accept chat responses. Yeah, anyone? Does anyone have anything to say? All right, Delaney struggles with making sure that the entire class is engaged and not just a few. Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how we can try to engage all of our students.
I get a lot of chit chat, trying to keep them quiet. And during a transition, if anything happens with my display, my TV, 1 second of me stopping means that apparently they can just talk amongst themselves, and that's annoying. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Whenever anything goes a little bit off track, it is hard to get them on track. And we'll talk a little bit about how we can pivot to maybe get their attention back. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's see. Timing, making sure that you have enough timing or enough content for the whole day. Definitely. First period blues. So I mentioned to you guys, I teach STEM. So the majority of my day is teaching 9th graders for an hour and a half in the morning. So their first 2 periods of the day, and 10th graders for an hour and a half at the end of my day. So for periods 8 and 9, so their last 2 periods of the day. So I've really had to kind of figure out how to do that. And it can be hard to keep their attention because you're like, look, I am also tired, but we've got to try to, get involved in this. Yes, Delaney, I get it. Some students are very sleepy. Issues with them not talking about current events. Dave, can you elaborate on that a little bit? I'm curious what you mean.
Oh, right now it's just everything is, talking about Donald Trump and just everything in general with going on. I mean, I try not to discourage it too much, because I really like the fact that my students are actually watching, whether it's social media or whatever they're getting their information from, the news. But I'm a fan of the younger generation trying to understand what's going on with the current events, when when things actually will matter to them. They might not be able to vote right now, but most of my kids and my seniors are 17 years old, so they need to understand what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of, you're happy you're doing that, but maybe it gets you off track a little bit. And it seems like Jonathan kind of said the same thing in the chat, having the class go in a different direction just because of questions that are asked, which, yes, it is good that they're engaged and they're having conversations with you, but it can be difficult when you're having to repeat yourself over and over again or try to steer the class back on track. So yes, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing that. Hopefully today I'm going to be able to teach you guys about these various instructional strategies, how I use them, and I hope that they will be useful for you. So by the end of today's lesson, you will hopefully understand various instructional strategies. We're going to discuss how to use them in your classrooms and hopefully do a little bit of practice with that as well. And I hope my biggest goal is that you guys walk away with some ideas and a new excitement to try some new things in your classroom. So the first thing that I want to talk about is strategies to get students talking. Teaching high school, this can be such a big struggle, trying to get our students to talk, trying to get them to participate. So let's just talk about a couple of different strategies. So one that we do to get students to talk and get involved in our class is whole class discussions. This can be particularly difficult with high school students because maybe they're shy, right? Maybe they don't feel comfortable talking in front of the entire class. Maybe they are tired. Maybe they just don't care, right? But either way, we need to try to find ways to get them involved. So what I will do a lot of the time, sometimes I feel like that teacher in the video, even though I promise I'm not boring. I try to be really fun for my students, but sometimes they just stare at you and they're like, especially first period, you know? Here are a couple strategies that I try when that happens. The first one is probably my least favorite and one that I only go to if I am absolutely desperate, and that is the whip around pass. So I typically try to open class discussion, and a lot of times my classes will participate, but if they're not, then I'm like, okay, if no one's going to participate, then we're all going to participate. So we're going to do the whip around pass. So I'll just say, you know, we pose a question. I usually give students time to think about it right before I just start saying you. I don't like to call out individuals. So I'll say, you know, that's basically when you do the whip around pass. You start at the front of your class and you just go seat by seat. Each person gives you their answer down the line, right? All the way to the end. I often try not to give the option of the pass. I know that this can be controversial when it comes to a strategy for teaching, but I like to have everyone try to say something. So this is one that I will use, but only if I'm really, really desperate. Have any of you guys used a bell ringer in your classrooms? Yes. So I like to use bell ringers just because, number one, it kind of gets the students ready to learn. Right? They walk in and they see, oh, okay. And it gives them a little bit of a hint as to what we're doing today. So I might put on the board, on my smart board, I'll put up, how does branding impact your life? And then while I'm taking attendance, while other students are coming in, while we're kind of waiting for announcements to start, they'll get to respond to the bell ringer. I like to do this because, again, it prepares them to learn, lets them know what we're going to talk about today. And then what it also does is it gives them time to think about it so that when it is time to have a whole class discussion, they feel more prepared to actively participate. Chris, did you have something that you wanted to add? Christopher?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Your bell ringer question, how do you frame it? Is it just a little quick Google Doc or is it written on the board? And do you go?
No, so I love to have cute little designs and things like that. So I always design a slide in Canva, like you would design a presentation. And then my smart board, you guys can probably see the blue glowing or little square behind me. I put it up there. So my students know I always have paper for them, pens ready if they need it, but they know if there's a question up there, they walk in and they can sit down and answer their question. And that way it just gives them some time to think.
But they're writing something down on a piece of paper and dropping it into a Dropbox?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, physical piece of paper. So I don't have them write it and turn it into me as a Google Doc. I'm not grading it. It's really just to kind of get them thinking and have them start a class discussion. So that's all that it is. They get participation points for it, but I'm not grading what they're actually writing.
Yeah, I just was curious about the actual where the pencil meets the paper. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. And then the other one on here is the think, pair, share. This is actually probably my favorite of the strategies to get students talking, and it's one that I use all the time. So a think, pair, share is essentially when you are having your students either pair up, 2 of them. I usually like to do small groups, 3 to 4 groups, or 3 to 4 people per group. And that's where you have them discuss within their group, and then their group shares with the class. So that way they feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their ideas because they're not put on the spot completely by themselves. And it gives them a chance to, think and talk within their group and get some new ideas. So I love the think, pair, share. This is one that I'm using all the time in my classroom because we do a lot of group work. So that is how we are able to use that group work, but incorporate it still into a whole class discussion. Because sometimes we'll have a group that will share something and then I'll see a group in the back kind of be like, oh, we didn't think about that, and they'll jot that down. So I really believe in the benefits of a whole class discussion. But there are situations where either your exercise just doesn't fit that, or maybe you have a class that really, really clams up and it just doesn't really fit those specific students. And that's why sometimes we have to pivot our strategies to the students that we're teaching. So I want to talk about some strategies to get students talking for small group discussions. So we have buzz groups. So these are essentially just small groups where they will discuss in their own little pod, kind of like that think, pair, share, but we're not doing the share part. They're just talking within their own little pod about it. Oh, sorry, one of my machines just started up. That is so bizarre. Okay, sorry. So the think, pair, or the buzz groups, like I mentioned, very similar to the think, pair, share. Also, I like to just have them in their groups brainstorming, right? So just kind of sitting down and talking. So they could brainstorm that same idea. They could be brainstorming ideas for a business or something like that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, a project that I have my students do. So brainstorming is great for these small group discussions. The one thing about the group discussions that are small group, not whole class, they do not have to share with the class, but this does require extra work and extra check-ins from the teacher. So you want to make sure, one, that they're actually staying on task, that they're discussing what they're supposed to be discussing, and two, that they're actually on track with their discussions. You know, are they headed in the right direction with this? Are they, it's kind of a way of assessment as well, right? So they don't have to share with the class, but they do have to share with me just so that I know that what they are doing is on task and on track. But I like to do this sometimes, but I will say my favorite is whole class discussion with the think, pair, share strategy. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee because my voice is starting to go. So for the remainder of this lesson, I'm going to be using, and I'll be kind of talking like I have been, but I'm going to discuss with you a project that is probably my favorite one to teach, and that is Mrs. Noble's Shark Tank Showdown. So I'm going to use this as a case study and show you how I use various instructional strategies to teach this lesson. Essentially what it is my students learn about different business roles, where they would fit within those business roles. They get to create a business, they design a logo, they learn about branding, and they learn about marketing principles. Thanks, Chris. They learn about marketing principles within this business. So this is going to be our case study, and this is going to be our guide through various instructional strategies. So I just wanted to give you an example of how I use the think, pair, share method with while I'm lecturing. So with my Shark Tank Showdown project, I do this lecture on creating a business, but it's not just me sitting there and going wah, 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 and being boring and lecturing. It's interactive, right? I want to use these strategies to get my students involved so that I'm not talking and they're just falling asleep like they were in the video. So what I do is I pose questions to the students, and then I give them time to discuss within their group. So you'll see my hook right here at the beginning. They kind of discuss, and then I have them hold that thought. But then you see as we go on here, and these aren't all of them, these are just a couple. They learn about how every business is created to either solve a problem or meet a need. And then within their group, I want them to discuss a business, name a business, and then name, and this is one that already exists. So they're not making this business. It could be McDonald's. And then they have to name the problem that that business solves or the need that that business meets for their customers, right? Then I say, hold on to that thought. We're going to use that business again. Then they learn all about what a target audience is and what makes up a target audience. Then I ask them to return back to their group and discuss that and identify a target audience for the business that they identified in the first slide. Then we share that with the class. Then they learn about the USP. Then they identified the USP for that business. So it really is kind of learning, discussing, and applying. So I'm not just sitting here talking to them. They're actually able to use that think, pair, share method to think critically, to share and discuss, to engage and connect with the material. And then they share with the class. And it also works as a great form of assessment, because I might have a group say, you know, tell me what the USP for that business is. And their answer might not be what the USP is. So I'm able to give them good feedback. And then I might see a group in the back go like, oh, okay, so that's what that is. So then they're changing their answer. So that is just a couple examples of the think, pair, share method that I use. So I want to know if you guys have any strategies that you can share with me that get your students talking. And you guys can drop it in the chat, or you could say it here verbally. Totally up to you.
I got
Anything
one.
that works.
If I can, we just wrapped up a simple design project, but I broke it down. It's for the soda pop bottle label, right? So they had to come up with a little bit of market research. I didn't stress them out about it. I just said, if you want to go into the energy drink sector, tell me why. Tell me what your challenges are, how competitive it'll be, and why. I don't need charts and things like that. But they did some research, and then they came back and we talked about it. And then they designed the label. The label had to go on a bottle. They had to illustrate it, and that was a big chunk of the grade. And then they had to put it into an ad, and you could do, either print, you could do online, you could do a horizontal, you could do a skyscraper ad, you could do a social tile. I didn't care, but I needed it to be presented as an invitational product. And then getting back to where you're coming from, Katie, I told them ahead of time, you're going to pitch it. You're going to pitch it to the class. And I've got a bunch of quiet kids in my class. They're like, do we have to talk? Do we have to say it out loud? It's like, yeah, that's part of it. So, and what was interesting was I also told them that I was going to show, so I built a Google slideshow, and here was Ava, and I showed her research, I showed the paragraph she wrote, I showed her sketches, I showed her development, illustration, her ad, and then I went to the second student, and right before the third student, who he didn't mail it in, but he definitely didn't put in the effort. He kind of came over by my desk and he said, "Are you going to show mine next?" And it's like, I looked at him. I didn't want to embarrass him, but I made it pretty clear in that moment. I skipped over his slides because he really didn't put in the work. The grade he got was the grade he got. But I think the next time we do one of these group things, if he knows up front that they're going to be, he's going to have to speak to it and his work's going to be shown on the board, I think he'll step up. I wasn't trying to, last thing I want to do is, flog him in front of the class because his work was really not that good. But it's neither here nor there. But that's what I do with my kids. Even the quiet ones are expected to talk about their work because they're going to have to do it later in a professional scene or in a school situation. They're going to have to talk about their work, explain why they did what they did, take the applause and take the shots. So that's one thing I do, is group critiques.
Absolutely. I love that. And one thing that I have in my class is I have my students, they present about once a week, because I really do believe in the ability to be able to speak to people and speak in front of people, especially if you want to go into marketing and communications. But I do use that method of grouping so that people that are more comfortable speaking in groups can talk more, but everyone has to say like a little something. Thank you all for participating in the chat. I see what if questions, real world connections, debate day. We're actually going to talk about some of these strategies a little bit later here in the presentation. Okay, I'm going to skip on to our next slide just for the sake of time. I feel like I've been talking so much. So now we're going to talk about strategies to motivate students and to get them to invest. I would argue that getting students motivated and specifically getting them invested and connected to material can be the make or break for a project. So let's talk about some of those strategies. Giving your students choice and creativity, I think, at least for me as an instructor, has been the number one sign of success. Being able to decide and be creative has been really great. Within this Shark Tank Showdown project, I actually had a group. I had these kids in my class that were just disruptive. They weren't bad kids, but they weren't really connecting to the material. They weren't really engaged throughout, some of our earlier lessons. And I would constantly have to tell them to be quiet, or it was a lot of classroom management, right? Just trying to manage them. And then I introduced the Shark Tank project. And then these kids got so invested. They got so excited about the project that they had, because the way that I lay this out is I'm like, hey, you create a business about whatever you want to. I don't say it has to be anything, but you have to be able to create a business where you can identify your target audience, your USP, create a strong brand, be able to pitch it, right? So allowing your students to have that choice, I would say, is probably the biggest, most successful strategy that I've used in my classroom. And I just want to show you guys, this is just a graphic of some of the businesses that my students have created within this project. So this is actually my I'm currently teaching 4th and 5th time teaching this project. My freshmen, I teach once a quarter, and my sophomores, I teach once a semester. So you can see we have twice as nice. This business is, it was a group of girls that really loved art. And this is an art supplies business where they take partially used art supplies and resell them for a lower cost. A moving business. This is a business of robot bodyguards that transform from cars. I know all of these different things. We have a counseling service that specifically helps people that have ADHD, a robot that like does your glam for you every morning. So you could see students have the choice to really do whatever they're interested in. So they can really feel connected and invested. And it has really, really helped me. That group of guys I was telling you about earlier created this business, which is called Loose Lux. And they are a fashion business where they create and sell these trendy clothes, but their USP is that they actually go to schools so that students have access and they're affordable. And these kids were so excited by this idea that they're walking out of here, and I don't have them as students anymore. It was very sad when they left, but they were walking out like, we got to start this, and we're going to make this, you know, we're going to use this website. And they're my exemplar now for this project. Whenever I show this project, I show the Shark Tank pitch that they did. So it just goes to show you all of these different ways that you can get students interested and invested by just giving them a little bit of room to be creative and to really have that choice. A couple of more ways to get your students invested and motivated. Voting, so allowing your students to have a voice, and also having contests, right? So voting has always been something in my classroom that I try to incorporate. I do it for every single project. Like I mentioned, I do have my kids do presentations every week within their group. So we also have rewards. I'm not above a bribe. I don't know if any of you guys are above a bribe, but I'm not. So I'll do bonus points as one way. And I found that that is one of the biggest motivators for students is I'm like, hey, if your group wins, then you guys get 5 bonus points. Or I have a snack basket or donuts. I usually do the donuts if I have a class that's having a hard time staying on track time-wise. I'm like, hey, if you guys stay connected and you guys are working and we finish this on time, I'll bring you guys donuts on Friday. And I found that that can be really, really useful too. And it can also boost your morale. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how voting and rewards, how I use this in my classroom as a strategy. So this is my class influencer board. Melanie, you've already seen this because I showcased it. You guys might have seen it if you saw it on our discussion board. I think I uploaded a photo. But basically, every week my class completes a project. Ideally, it's every week. And then they come up and they present it in front of the class. Each group has to nominate one influencer, and they have to come up and say, so for example, they'll say, Nathan is our influencer for this week. And the reason that we nominated Nathan is because he came up with this really great idea. And anytime that we were going off track, Nathan makes sure that we got back on track. So they're kind of gassing up their teammates, right? Making them feel excited. And then also it makes them work harder because if they win and they're up on that influencer board, the whole group gets 5 bonus points. And the influencer that's on the influencer board gets 2 extra votes in next week's contest. So truly kind of allowing them to influence the way that the next contest goes. And this, I came up with this idea before I taught. And I found, you can see we have like the little influencer check mark and all of that. And I thought it was cute, but I didn't know what it would do for student motivation. I have to cover up these pictures. So I don't announce who wins that day. I count the votes secretly to make sure there's not a tie. And then I print out the pictures and I have to cover up the photo before class time because kids are running in my room all day. Who won the influencer trying to look? And I make it a big reveal. So it's been a really good way for my students to, you know, for them to get involved and to get motivated. And do they love having their picture on a bulletin board? Honestly, probably not. But they sure love the bonus points and they love the idea of winning. So Jonathan wants to know what happens when I have a tie. So when I have a tie for my influencer, I say, these are my top 2 groups. Those 2 groups are excluded from voting. No group can vote for their own influencer, but those 2 groups are excluded from voting. Everyone else has to vote. If it ties again, then I go off of who scored higher on the rubric. And that's how I decide the winner of the influencer. But I never really want to do that. I don't think I've had to do that yet, but that is my rule. just because, you know, I want the class to decide. That's the whole point of voting, right? Okay, so another way to get students to be motivated and invested, real world connections. Delaney, I think you were the one that had mentioned that earlier. Making these real world connections, show them how they can actually use what they're learning and how it can impact their future, right? Show them someone who's done it. So guest speakers are really great for this. Field trips are really great for this. You can also use a lot of other things like case studies, videos, things like that. But I like to actually show them firsthand. So guest speakers and field trips are my favorite. I want to tell you guys about a field trip I recently took some kids on. So these are not even my students. This is a group of creative arts and design students that are training for Skills USA. So I've been taking them every day for an hour and a half, and they just decided, I co-teach them sometimes, and they decided out of nowhere they wanted to compete in broadcast journalism against schools that have full broadcast programs. And I'm like, okay, yeah, we could do that. I could teach you guys about broadcast. Why not? And then they got in here and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so hard because you have to learn newsworthiness. You have to learn how to write. It's a lot of sitting at a computer and evaluating things and practicing and drilling. So I noticed they were getting a little freaked out, but they still wanted to do it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take you guys to a news station. So, oh, Delaney, you're going to Skills in 2 weeks? Oh, cool. So what I wanted to do, I actually took them to the news station that I worked at. It's 2 stations in 1. So I was a broadcast journalist for 5 years before I went into marketing. So I took them back to the stations I worked at. They got to see behind the scenes of the news, the control room. They got to sit in for a live news broadcast. And afterwards, I took them to Chili's for lunch, their pick. And all they were talking about is, oh my gosh, you know, I wanted to be a graphic designer, but now, I mean, how much money do you make as a broadcast journalist? Not much. What's the schedule like? You know, asking all these questions. Maybe I do want to do this at least for a couple of years. So they were so excited. And since then, they have just been so invested. I've been having them do 90-minute drills in my classroom for the past few weeks. And it really got them excited and invested within this project. So I'm really excited. So I want to know, because I'd love to learn from you guys as well. What is your favorite strategy to motivate your students? I know that we saw some games and things like that in here and competitions, but is there anything specific anyone wants to share?
In my visual programming class, I do a game competition where they divide themselves up into groups, which is always a challenge because sometimes they want to choose their own groups and sometimes they beg for me to choose their own groups. And they create their own game, and I have other teachers throughout the building as the judges of the game, and they come down and play and rank it, and then they win. First place gets lunch at our culinary restaurant that's here at Normandy. So, and they're normally not allowed to eat there, so it's a big special thing for them. So it works out really cool.
That's great. Thank you for sharing, Dwayne. Jonathan, you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm big on what you said with the real world connection. I love to bring in guest speakers. I think I've lost track of how many people I've had in so far this school year, of people that come in and either teach a class to the students or just come in and talk to the kids. And every time we have another guest speaker, the kids are always asking, like, are they going to be, are they going to be on the internship list are they going to be one of the contractors that are hiring us over for the summer? And all of my junior class this year, they're highly work motivated. They all want to go to work, and I keep pushing them like, hey, you're here to learn this, and I'm here to get you out into the field. And there's a lot of jobs out there. And the more I encourage that, I've been noticing a lot more students checking into it. Beginning of the school year, a lot of them already were. And this week I had another one that I didn't think was gonna head in, or I didn't think he had any interest into getting into HVAC. And out of nowhere, I told him about how he could have access to this one software that we pay for. And he's checked in, he's earning certifications right now, he's doing training at home by himself, and just the real world connection, tying it all back.
Yeah, that is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about changing pace. This is something that, when we talk about people, if, let's say our smart board malfunctions or something happens, we've got to kind of change it up a little bit and get these kids back to where we need them to be. So there's some mental pace changers we can do and physical pace changers. So mental pace changers I want to talk about, brain breaks. So playing things like Simon Says or this or that. So for example, when I first started teaching, so I had no idea I was going to be a teacher until like almost July of this year. And when I got in here, I hadn't even taken a class from Kent yet because I started, you know, I got hired so late. So I actually taught for 2 weeks before I even learned anything on how to teach. And I had my freshmen in here and they just looked exhausted and like they were going to fall asleep and all this. I'm like, okay, everybody up. And we just played a this or that where I'm like, okay, if you like the Browns, go over here. If you like the Steelers, go over there. And we did that a couple times and they were all shy because they were freshmen. They came from all different school districts. So they were able to make some friends. And by the time they got back, we were able to kind of, you know, refocus on what we needed to just because they had that mental brain break. Then we also have physical pace changers. And these can kind of be physical and mental, but physically assigning or switching groups or seats. So if you are seating, let's say you have a group of kids that's always working together. I had this with my sophomores this year, this semester, and it just seems like they're in this rut. A way that you can change that pace is just switch up some groups a little bit and even tell them, hey, this is temporary. We're just going to try something out. I don't want to take you away from your friends. I always try to keep them with at least one friend. But it gives them new brains to talk to, right? It kind of just switches up where they're coming from mentally. Also, being hands-on, right? So this could be using new tech. I know in career tech, we're using a lot of different technology and things like that, or even something as simple as Play-Doh or balloons. So I want to show you a pace changer that I do related to the Shark Tank project. So I had them learn about different business roles. They had to research them. They had to take a quiz, 2 quizzes to see where they kind of would fit in with their business. And then they get assigned roles. And it just seemed like they were maybe getting a little bit bored about learning about business roles. So what I did is, and this is something that I have totally switched from the first time I taught this. I actually have them do a balloon tower within their group. So these are their actual Shark Tank groups. And despite their faces in some of these, they really did enjoy it and have fun. And they had to learn how to build a balloon tower. They were given a binder, 25 balloons, a balloon pump, a roll of tape, and instructions. They had 20 minutes to build this balloon tower that could support the binder. And they were able to see how their business roles really function within a hands-on project. So it kind of made it a little bit easier for them to understand. And they saw how they kind of naturally fell into those roles, and it got them up and moving and doing something silly and laughing. And, you know, it was just kind of a good way to end that part of the lesson. So going hands-on always does help with changing pace while they're still learning. All right, and finally, I want to talk to you guys about strategies to get students thinking. So beginning with a question, but not just any question, right? You want to ask open-ended questions that actually allow them the space to think critically. So, you know, we don't want to do those yes or no questions or anything that could be answered really, really simple. What if scenarios? I saw someone mention the what if scenarios that they use. I love to use those what if scenarios with my class because it just kind of gets them to think about it in a different way. You can have them draw their answer. So maybe you pose a question up on your smartboard, or you ask it to the class. They could actually sketch out their answer and showcase it. It could maybe get like some giggles within the classroom, or help people, you know, learn something in a different way. And then I also like devil's advocate. So if I pose, how does branding impact your life? And someone's like, it doesn't impact my life. I'm like, okay, let's stop on that thought for a second. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. Tell me how branding doesn't impact your life, right? And they can kind of say, they can defend that. And then I can kind of go back at them and explain it how it is. So these are just some different ways to get your kids thinking. Also problem solving. So reversing and reverse engineering from a solution to what the actual problem was. This is one that's really useful. Sorting or grouping items. At the beginning of the year, I have my students sign this 2-page equipment rules and procedures thing and it's boring and, they're probably not going to remember it all. But to get them to remember it, because it's important, they need to know how to check equipment in and out. They need to know how to use the equipment. I actually have little cards printed out and laminated, and the whole class has to match the name of the rule and the actual rule itself. And they sort that out as a class, and then they read it out loud, kind of reinforcing that information. Explaining what went wrong, or explaining how a problem could be prevented. I kind of use this in my business pitch relay. So I have them start with a problem, and then they have to find a solution for it. And to do that, they have to create their business. So this is kind of a mini Shark Tank showdown without the student choice in it, right? They just randomly select that card, but it does kind of get their brain thinking and helps them reverse engineer, and it kind of gets them ready. And it also serves as an assessment for me to really see if they understood it, if we need to spend more time on anything else. Okay, and then graphic organizers. So using and having extra resources available, and it can also allow your students to think outside of the box. So
Katie, you have 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so I'll quickly go over this, but when I first taught branding in my first quarter of teaching, it absolutely tanked. I felt like the kids didn't understand it. If they did, they understood some of it. I did a survey at the end of the 9 weeks, like, hey, what was your favorite lesson? What was your least favorite lesson? Everyone's least favorite lesson was branding. So I was thinking, I got to find a new way to do this. So I thought, oh, I could tie this into my Shark Tank project. So instead of teaching them branding through the lens of personal branding, I taught them branding through branding their business. And I had them do it through creating a brand board. So you can see each of these brand boards has very specific brands, and they learn about brand words and what they mean. They learn what a color palette does. They learn about fonts and things like that. And then they actually present these to the class, and they have to defend their brand and explain every part of it. And I found it was really, really useful for them. Also, this is one I stumbled across this week. I've taught mission statements every quarter. And for some reason, my freshmen, they just weren't getting it. It wasn't sticking. And I'm like, what is going on? So I ran back to my computer and I whipped up this graphic organizer. Typically, I make it a little bit cuter, but desperate times call for desperate measures. So I had to make it black and white. But I printed it out, and then all of a sudden it clicked. So now this was a learning lesson for me. I'm going to make sure I have a resource like this for all of my students, for all of my groups, for each of my lessons, just so that they're able to kind of learn from it. And if they want to use it, they can, but they do not have to. So I might actually, no, I was going to show you guys my Shark Tank showdown, but I'm not going to because I don't have as much time as I'd like to. So I just want to jump into this really quickly. I'd like for you guys to just quickly, like, let's take the next, what do I have, 3 minutes, Melanie? Let's take the next 2 minutes and see if you guys can do this. I'd love for you guys to select a strategy we talked about today, especially one that could be helpful in your area of CT, and just design a little activity, and then we could share it with the class. I do have a resource here, just kind of listing the instructional strategies we talked about, and I will send it here in the chat so that you guys can look at that as well. But I'm just gonna say like 2 minutes, and then we will see if anyone would like to just like share quickly what ideas they have. And if anyone has an idea before the 2 minutes, just raise your hand here on Google, and we can share beforehand. I'm going to mute myself so you don't have to hear me cough. Okay, is anyone ready to share? Okay, Jonathan. Today in class, I split my class in two at random, picking names from a jar, and played Family Feud. Your students are currently learning electrical schematic symbols. Oh yeah, I could see how you would have to find some different strategies to teach that. I could see how that could get a little cumbersome in the components they associate to 15 to 20-minute break. So did they like it? Did you feel like it was able to kind of switch up the lesson a little bit? Yeah, that's great. That's awesome, Jonathan. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else have an idea that they'd like to share? Delaney, yes, please share.
I think this is probably more relating to people who may teach something similar to me, which my students are on computers. It's videoed right now, it's graphic design, it's all of those things. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do now is they're working on a project for an actual client, but they could sit and edit for 5 days straight and lose their minds and their motivation. And so we're breaking it up into segments of like what could have gone wrong, or what would you have liked to have been done differently, or like those kind of what if scenarios, to give them like 10 to 15 minutes of conversation time, so that way they're not just staring at their screen, and they can, like, sometimes you need to complain a little bit too, like they're tired of listening to these interviews, they're like, oh my gosh, this person says every fifth word, I don't know how to edit this. Like, it gives them a chance to kind of make sure that everyone's on the same page as each other, but then also to be like, okay, what would I have done differently if I got to do this? Or well, I guess this could be a lot worse if this was the scenario. So kind of letting them have that discussion of that real world and then bringing it back to the work that they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I taught podcasting last semester, and we learned storytelling and how storytelling impacts facts through listening to the Serial podcast. And my kids loved the podcast, but they didn't love the analysis worksheet we did. So I'm pivoting my strategy to, instead of doing an analysis worksheet, they could take their own notes, and then they have to do mini podcasts after each episode with a friend, kind of recapping and talking about storytelling. But that way they're getting to use the tech and kind of learn podcasting through that. So yes, I think I'm out of time. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think I went a little over. I apologize, I wasn't able to get to everything. But thank you all so much. I do have an exit ticket that I'm going to put in here, just so that you all can kind of give me a little bit of feedback. And I did just put that in the chat, but thank you all so much for listening. And I hope that you guys learned something and can try something new in your classroom.
Excellent. And you included on the Google Sheet a link to these different ideas. So I would I was just looking at it. Maybe that was in your lesson plan. I would share that with them. It is in your lesson plan. So there was like a 1-page resource sheet that has listed all the little ideas that you talked about. Do you know what I'm talking about, Katie?
Oh, I shared that in the chat here.
Oh,
Yes,
okay. Yay.
I did. I shared that resource in the chat there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has everything we talked about today.
Yeah. So teachers, make sure that you, print that out, have it as you're building out your great lesson plans. Very good, Katie. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's excellent. That's really, really good stuff. All of those ideas are things that all of us can be implementing in our classrooms. And it may, again, like I always say, take a crawl, walk, run approach to this. You might not be ready to do some of those things yet, and that's perfectly fine. But the options that are out there, right? So you don't have to go fishing for these new ideas. You don't have to reinvent anything. Use the big ideas and the methods that your fellow colleagues are using that are working. So excellent. Go ahead and unshare there for it. Thank you much. All right. Josh, you can go ahead and get ready to go. As a reminder, if you're doing a peer review tonight, those peer reviews are the template is out on the spreadsheet. It's also out on the assignment for that. Please make sure that you share permissions so that your colleagues can read it and I can read it. That's really helpful. And just let me know when you need help. And it's perfectly fine because every one of these virtual tools are so different. So that's perfectly great. So if you want to share, you're going to find the red leave button, but don't hit it. Right next to the red leave button is the share button. At least on my screen, it's like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Latasha, did you get my email while we're waiting for Josh? Did you get my email today about that last week of presentations? Okay, you don't have to respond now. I just want to make sure that you saw that, and I apologize for that. So we'll do whatever we need to do for you. Sorry
Okay,
about
I
that.
sent you an email.
Okay, I feel bad, but I need to be a mom that night.
Am I on? Can you
Yeah,
guys
I
see me?
see an exit ticket, differentiated strategies exit ticket. So we're looking
Okay,
at.
you weren't supposed to see that just yet.
That's all right. Yeah, lots of tabs. You're like me, lots of tabs. All right, Josh, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, sir. Good luck to you. You're going to do great.
All right, appreciate it. Just waiting on it to load. All right, so as you guys already know, today I'm going to do mine on differentiated strategies. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joshua Hollingshead. I prefer to go by Coach J. At least that's what the kids call me. I work at Shaw High School, going into my second year. Definitely appreciate being in this course as it's helping me become a better teacher. So with that being said, new teachers, we have to learn about differentiated strategies and ways to reach our children. So I once heard somebody give a story, but before I even give that story, let me pose a question first. Are you a talented chef or a one trick pony? And what I mean by that is I once heard someone give a story about how things was compared to how things are, right? So back in the day, for some of us, I don't know, but in my childhood, being raised, if I had siblings in the house, if my mom cooked something, she made that one something, and if you wanted to eat that night, you had to eat what was made. Whereas opposed to today, we have moms who make a plethora of different meals to satisfy different appetites. So when you think about providing varying different instructional strategies and providing for different academic appetites, I'll pose the question, are you a talented chef or a one-trick pony? So with that, so tonight we're going to go over different strategies as it relates to differentiated strategies. And hopefully some of these strategies, if you're not doing them already, that can help you up your game and being a better teacher. What are differentiated strategies? So we just read the week 8 module, so we all know what differentiated strategies are. It's ways to tailor instructions to meet individual needs while still giving students access to learning in ways that fit their abilities, interests, and their learning styles. As a part of our differentiated learning strategies, you got to consider different learning styles for your students. And as it relates to that, knowing and understanding their learning style is very key. Because when you know and understand your kid's learning style, it puts you in a greater advantage to help that kid and give that kid what that kid needs to be successful. So I'll pose another question. What is your kid's learning styles? And do you know all of your children's learning style in your classroom? As we all know, audio is one of them, where kids learn best by listening. Visual, where kids learn best by seeing. And kinesthetic, where kids learn best by hands-on activity. And then you have reading and linguistic, where kids learn best by reading or language-based activities. Those can be tied in with visual as well, but for the main three, we're going to focus on audio, visual, and kinesthetic. So as we talk about the key aspects of differentiation, you got to keep in mind the 4 key aspects, which is content, process, product, and learning environment. So as it relates to content, we all know what that content is. It's modifying what students learn, identifying lesson plans and objectives. And when it comes to the process, that's how they're going to learn it. So of course, the content is what they're going to learn, process is how they're going to learn it, product being how they show that they've learned it. All right, freedom of choice, and they can choose how they want to show how they learned it. And then learning environment, which being the last one, which is very important as well, because if you don't have a conducive learning environment, it's going to be hard to keep kids engaged or even to get them interested in the first place. And when it comes to product, formative assessment during the readings, during our module, it said formative assessment is the best assessment, which I actually absolutely agree. If not formative assessment, I will also do performance-based assessment. Both assessments are very well productive. With formative assessments, it gives you a chance to adjust on the fly without you having to make major adjustments and still proceed with a smooth process as you try to get through your lesson plan that day. And of course, performance-based assessment helps you do it on the fly as well after they demonstrate the I do, you do, we do. What to do? So when it comes to what to do, you have to identify the learning style. After you identify the learning style, you got to provide a variety in content, process, product, and learning environment. Same things we just went over. Now, the most important part, how to do. Now, after identifying the learning style of each student, you would use the information to develop learning strategies and activities to help that student. I have students in my classroom that range from academic enrichment to IEP. So when it comes to instructional strategies and differentiation strategies, this is a key element in trying to build my productivity as a teacher. So when it comes to the content, you want to stick with the current lesson plan. So I understand that we're all CTE teachers, but we all teach different things within CTE. So whatever your current lesson plan is, that would be the content. And of course, I wanted to provide some examples of different strategies that goes under that content. So different things like matching words, matching vocabulary with definitions. So I find that to be very useful and very productive. My kids seem to like that a lot. PowerPoint presentations. As you can see, that's one of my go-tos because that's what I'm doing with you right now. And when it comes to power presentations, note-taking. Now, for my kids, it takes them forever to get through a PowerPoint slide because they have to, they all write at different speeds. But I want them all to get down the information that they need to know so they can, have that information so they can study and be prepared for any future quizzes or tests. So sometimes it takes a while to get through it, but patience is key. Graphic charts, that's for my visual learners. So graphic charts, it works very well. It puts everything out in the forefront, right there in front of you so you can see it. It's something tangible that they can take home with them. They can pull it out their book bag and look at it later on when they're at home. So it's just something that works for them being a visual learner. When it comes to process, some different strategies on process. Of course, you can go the traditional route, textbooks for visual and word, reading for our ready learners. I use that as well sometimes. Just the other day, I had my kids write down the vocabulary words and write down the definitions to those vocabulary words. And it was a nice piece for build work. I did that as build work before I went into my lesson plan that day. And it was cool because I was able to help them get the words that they need to know anyway. And it bought me some time to kind of prepare for the lesson that day as well. So that was the beauty of that. Audio learners, allowing audio learners to listen to audiobooks. That works as well. I'm an audio learner as well. I have a plethora of books that I listen to in the car when I'm on my way to work, when I'm leaving work. It's very rare that I get a chance to sit down and read a book, but I do purchase a lot of audiobooks. So audio learners, audiobooks is good for audio learners. Giving kinesthetic learners an opportunity to learn through an interactive hands-on activity. That can be an online activity. I actually have an activity later on in this presentation that we're going to do. Actually, it's something that my kid put me on to. It's called Blue-Kit. Maybe some of you are familiar with it, and if not, you will get a chance to get familiar with it today. Multi-sensory learning, like online gaming tools such as Blue-Kit. The same thing I was just talking about. The thing about Blue-Kit is multi-sensory, so it ties in all the components. And so I really like that. The kids really like that. You could choose different games on the website, and you'll get a chance to interact with that today. Project-based learning. That's really good for our tactical kinesthetic learners, our hands-on learners. Keeping them engaged is very key because sometimes those kinesthetic learners, they have short attention spans, and they'll venture out. Their body will still be there, but mentally they're gone. So you got to bring them back in and keep them there and keep them engaged and keep them present. So project-based learning works really well. And then tiered lessons or tiered assignments. Tiered assignments is really good too because if you have an IEP kid or academic enrichment kid, you can kind of categorize your assignments based on the comprehension levels of that student. So that way, eliminates idle time. You don't have to worry about your students finishing their work and then becoming idle, becoming bored, and doing disruptive things. It keeps everything flowing good, keeps them working, keeping things productive. Speaking of product. All right, so with product, how are the kids going to show what they learned? All right, so I'm going to get through this a little quickly. So read and write learners can complete a written assignment. All right, I have students in my room who would prefer doing that. I have students in my room who are excellent solo workers, but they're still learning how to be good team workers. So for those students, they definitely can, go in the corner, read, write, read what they're supposed to read and write an assignment. And then writing is a strong suit as well. Visual learners. You can create a timeline for graphic organizer on the content. So for my visual learners, last week, before the month ended, for Black History Month, I did a project, Who was the GOAT between LeBron and Mike? And that's a topic that is forever going on in my room. And it sways from side to side as far as who's who. But one of my kids, he's a visual learner, and he created a timeline of LeBron's career from the time that he came into the league and still ongoing, of course. And I thought that was really cool how he captured those moments and those dates, and the dates were accurate. And he captured those things and put them in the timeline. I thought that was really dope. Audio learners. Another student, speaking of that same project, another student who likes to rap, and he wanted to express himself in that way and created a song. And he sent me the lyrics, and I had to make sure that I read the lyrics to make sure that the lyrics were, first of all, that they're appropriate. And then second of all, making sure that they address the content questions that I wanted my students to stay on track for. I wanted to guide their experience with this project and making sure they were hitting certain points. So, and it was good. He got an A on that. So that was good for him being an audio learner. And kinesthetic. And also, I feel like that song was also kinesthetic too, because he had to actually make that song. So that was very kinesthetic. It was very multi-sensory. But kinesthetic learners can make a 3D model or something to that extent. So all our kinesthetic learners, which I'm one as well, so I understand that. Learning environment. With the learning environment, you definitely want to make sure your learning environment is conducive for your students. the moment they walk into the room, you have to have something that captures their attention, that captures their interest, that makes them want to come back, that makes them enjoy being there. So I remember when I was a kid, certain students or certain teachers would decorate their room with certain quotes and different posters. And, when you walk in and you see that stuff is enticing. It makes you want to be there. It makes you want to apply 100% of your effort. So that's definitely important. Also having flexible grouping where you kind of group your students based on a lot of different presets, and presets can range from comprehension levels, interest levels, and things like that. So setting that flexible group into your strategy and to your advantage to make sure that they get what they're supposed to be getting. Cooperative peer learning, I do a lot of that as well. It's kind of funny because with the cooperative peer learning, my kids, it'd be hard for me to keep up with the lingo nowadays. Sometimes I feel like I'm still young, but I get proven wrong every time they say a word. And I'm like, what's that? And so like they talk to each other and they're giving each other peer learning and they're still learning the content, but they're talking to each other in the lingo. And I just be like, I wonder if they're still talking about the content. But it's pretty cool though, because I know that they're still learning because when I do my assessment, everything is where it needs to be. And then the flipped classroom. I haven't really done that, so I can't really speak from that from experience, but I do know that that's a strategy that does work well from what I read up on it and talking to different people who have done the flipped classroom assessment or strategy. So for those of you out there who have done that before, maybe you could chime in. If you want to put that in the chat box, or if you want to chime in right now and speak on it, um, maybe you could share that. But if not, then that's cool too. So I want to speak in real life example. Two of my students, this is real life right here. Two of my students, Shantae and Kevin. Um, One student is a multi-sensory learner, and the other one is more of a hands-on kinesthetic learner. One is a academic enrichment kid. One is an IEP kid. So when we're talking about differentiated strategies, you have to cater, going back to my initial question, are you a talented chef or a one-trick pony? You have to be able to cater to both Shantae and Kevin and everyone in between. For Shantae, I'm able to utilize a number of different strategies as all learning styles. She can adapt just fine. So no matter what the content is always the same, and we all know that. So we can skip past that. But for the process, it's where it differentiates. Multi-based, but prefers audio and visual learning, as she prefers to take notes and study. Product, good at writing papers. I mentioned that as well. That's who I was talking about when I mentioned that earlier. She's good at writing papers. She works solo. She's getting better at working in groups, but she works well solo. And writing is her natural strong suit. Learning environment, prefers to work alone, like I just said. And for Kevin, he prefers hands-on activities. Kevin is my guy. He keeps content. Content is the same as Shantae, as well as it's the same as everyone else. But he likes project-based learning strategy. So I pull out the multi-sensory tools for him, the gamings. If we're going over sports medicine activities, right now I've been teaching them how to tape ankles and how to tape wrists and how to recognize ranges of motion with joint functions and stuff like that. So everything is more hands-on with Kevin because I gotta keep him right there mentally present. And that works well. That works very well with Kevin. Prefers to show what he learned through creation and demonstration. Because he wants to get that level of approval. He's seeking that approval, so he wants to show you that he learned what he was just taught. And so, I'm all for that. Performance-based learning, of course, that's one of our assessments. And then small groups. I also like putting him in small groups, whether that's small groups with his peers or small groups with a intervention specialist or something to that extent, or maybe just a small group with just me. But just giving him that intimate setting, that learning environment. So in the module that our lovely professor, Melanie Karen, provided for us, it talks about some of the pros and cons, but I wanted to talk about the cons instead of focusing on the pros. Maybe we could find ways around some of those cons. I know one of the biggest cons is not having enough time. That when you have to worry about differentiated strategies, it puts more prep time into what you have to do. And our life is already hell enough, right? But figuring out how to do it is key. The learning curve can be steep, and some schools lack professional development resources. Or last but not least, critics argue there isn't enough research to support the benefits of differentiated instruction outweighing the added prep time. My outtake on that, I feel like, and from looking at different case studies and different things, and from talking to different people, I feel like if you emphasize a few things, you can help combat those, like emphasizing flexible grouping, like I spoke on earlier. It provides a wide variety of different ways you can approach it. Whether you were to do a preset based on comprehension levels or interest levels, learning styles, different things like that. Also, anchor activities. Anchor activities, that's actually really good. A funny thing comes to mind because, we all have those students who are very smart and they get done with their work very early. And then when they get done with their work, some of those students know how to sit still, but then some of those students become idle. The idle time is the devil's time. And so sometimes that reacts in class disruption. And so I know a few of those kids as a teacher, and when I was a student, I knew a few of those kids. So you got to have anchor activities for those kids. And that way, when they finish with one activity, they move on to the next, and it's still relevant to the content. So it still zones in and help them further understand what they need to understand on an enrichment level. Use informative assessment to provide instruction that allows adjustments to fly on the fly without having to make major changes on the lesson. I spoke on this earlier. I really think this is the most productive and beneficial assessment strategy outside of performance-based, because after you teach them, you want to be able to see if they can do it. So performance-based is important as well. All right. Katie went before me. A lot of our topics are kind of like sister topics. A lot of things go hand in hand from side to side from what she talked about to what I talked about. So think, pair, share is another thing that's a very beneficial strategy. And so I'm glad that she touched on that today because, I could bring it home from here. So what I would do is I would break you guys up into groups, right? And I would go, well, we got 12 people in here, so let's go 3 groups of 4. And so what I would do is we'll go 1s, 2s, and 3s. And Professor, maybe you can help me with this part. But let's break these guys into break sessions or break rooms.
So I
And
think there's 10 because you don't want to throw me in, I don't think. Unless you do, that's fine.
I mean, I don't mind, sure.
Okay. Okay, then I will. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, including me, because I think Katie's gonna probably bolt here if she hasn't already. So there's 10 of us. And how do you want folks to, do you want them to identify as audio, visual, or kinesthetic, or do you want me just to divide them randomly into the groups?
We can go, if they want, they could just say 1, 2, 3 and repeat
Okay.
that sequence.
Yeah.
And then let's just put the 1s as audio and the
Okay.
2s as visual.
Okay. So you want me to group all the 1s together, all the 2s together, and all the 3s together,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna write these down. It might take me a minute. Chris is a 2. Robert is a 3.
And then while she's doing that, let me just explain what we're about to do. We're going to focus on one specific strategy, which is tiered assignments. And that's the approach where you kind of have your assignments broken down into tiers based on comprehension levels to kind of reach your academic enrichment kids, your IEP kids, and everyone in between. So focus on them tiered assignments only. I want group one to come up with to brainstorm as many examples of audio strategies that you can satisfy tiered assignments. And then the same thing with visual and then kinesthetic. And within that time frame, within your group, I want you to brainstorm on these different strategies, and they all have to be relative to what your group has been assigned. I want you to share these things with each other. Now, if we have time, we'll come back together as a collective whole, and you guys can share as a group with the other two groups. But if we don't get that time, I at least want you guys to take advantage of the time within your group to share those strategies and those brainstorms, those ideas, because you might be in a group with somebody who teach the same thing you teach, and even if they don't teach the same thing you teach, they could probably pick up from something that you do. So that's just all this. Let's peer learn. Let's peer teach each other. Peer learning.
Okay.
So let's go ahead. We ready?
I'm working. I'm still
Okay.
working it. And I had some people not respond. And so those people I'm going to put in group one because 3 is pretty full. Let's see, Dave. Dave is 3. Okay. And all right. Delaney. Dwayne left. So he's group 4. What? There's no group 4, right? Okay. All right. And I'll just do it that way. Okay. I think everybody's in a group. And I will save those. And how much time do you want them in the group? You
Let's
have
give them.
you have
let's
20 minutes total left. Total left.
let's give them 8.
Okay. All right. And the rooms are open.
So at this point, do they still hear us or they're in their groups?
I may have put you in a room, Josh. Sorry. Just don't click on it if you see. So no, they'll go to their rooms now. And let me close those. So it's 6 minutes. Okay, there you are again. All right. I kicked you out. You are welcome. I can add you to each one of those rooms individually if you want to go monitor what's going on.
Yeah, because I was just in room 1 and
Yeah,
I just got cut off. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. If I could do that, how do I do
sure.
that?
So I just will add you back into room 1 and I'll watch the timer and then I'll switch you. So in
Okay.
2 minutes, I'll send you over. I'll try to
All
do
right,
my
cool.
best. Okay. All right.
Thank
Let
you.
me let's see how good I am at this. All right. So you are unassigned and you're going back to room 1 for 2 minutes. All right.
All right. I think I'm still with you.
Yeah, it might take us.
Oh,
Sometimes it gives you a link to click or go there. There you go. So separate timer here, 2 minutes. Okay. Oh, no. Oh, okay, here we go. Um,
Proper protocol for her to get in my class. Okay, I'm fussing.
Hello.
hello, you're all back. Is
All
your
right,
teacher back? There he is. There he is. Okay.
guys, I think Professor brought us back. My apologies. Professor Karen and I had a set plan she was gonna rotate me in every 2 minutes. So I apologize if she rotated me at the time where either I was speaking or you were speaking and we got cut off. But I am happy that I was able to rotate throughout the rooms and kind of share those conversations and experiences with some of you guys. Um, I tell you what, we have about, if we can get this done in about maybe, if I could put you guys on a quick timer of, of 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds to quickly express what you guys came up with as a group. I only need one representative from each group to go. I'll, just to make it go further, I'll call on somebody from one group, and then that person could go and speak on behalf of that group, and then we can just keep it going like that. For the first group, I think it was the visual group. We had Tasha and Delaney. Would one of you guys like to speak?
We were audio.
The audio, okay. And what did you guys speak about? What you guys come up with?
Um, it was funny. We talked a little bit about how just I feel like less and less and less of my students are auditory learners. I see a lot more students need audio with something else. Whether it's they're watching a video and they have captions on, they want to like hear me talk about something, but then they want to do it at the same time as me while I'm showing them. Like I feel like very few students are standalone auditory listeners these days. But the key thing that I use for auditory learners is just having some sort of video to reference back to at all times. So in my classroom, it's a lot of video tutorials on how to do things. And so that way they can always listen to that and go back, have some sort of framework and things like that. I like that Josh and Katie earlier in her presentation threw podcasts out there. I haven't used podcasts in my class, but I think that's an awesome audio option, especially because my next unit is sound. And so learning and listening through podcasts on how to tell stories and then translating that into them potentially making their own podcasts. But from our experience, I think Tasha agreed that audio learners just usually need something with that, especially because kids are used to having to be audio only during the school day sometimes. And so in our class with CTE, you have to kind of differentiate that even further.
Yeah, for sure. And we were talking about that too, and I apologize, I got cut off when I was about to explain about the podcast situation with my kids as well. And I would love to get into that with you later. I'll inbox you and we could talk about that, and I'll share ideas what I've been going through with my kids. Um, the next group we had Chris, Jonathan, and Brian. Would one of you guys like to go and speak?
Yeah, I can jump in first. Jonathan, you want to follow? I'll just, since I pitched this idea of the three of us, Jonathan's HVAC, Brian's construction, and I'm digital art and design. So I thought, just as an idea to throw a rope around, what would be something that possibly common to the three programs, and not like it's the first thing I came up with, but I thought like, okay, all of us have to know how to operate an AED machine. It's hanging on the wall in the hallway, right? You pop that box open, and it's got directions, very simple directions, almost IKEA simple directions about where to put the pads, and you push a button and there's little audio that'll go off on you too, but you really have to follow along with directions that are made as simple as possible. So we kind of thought that maybe not knowing entirely which way you wanted us to go, Josh, we thought like that one may be an example of a visual solution to a problem. And Melanie added that we're not all siloed. That we have to almost look at this almost as a Venn diagram where the visual for us. You had mentioned when you dropped in, Josh, that there's a kinesthetic element to this too. There's audio involved. Jonathan, you had a few thoughts, notes?
Well, it comes down to there's that old saying of you want me to draw a picture for you as to how to do this, but that's what it comes down to is showing the student how to do something. They're going to learn by seeing it. And that's just, yeah, that's what it comes down to is learning through seeing and watching someone else do it or looking at a picture and seeing what it's supposed to look like when it's done or seeing step by step. Here's a visual. It's like putting a dresser together from IKEA. I use Chris's example with that. There's always a picture that goes with it. If you don't follow along with the instructions, next thing you know, you got 50 screws and a couple pieces of wood left over and the dresser's missing a leg. Just following along visually.
For sure. 100%. I definitely agree. I think that all the men in here can definitely attest to the fact that when it comes to a box of instructions, we don't look at the instructions, we look at the box and try to put it together based off of the box. Now, some of us are readers who will actually take the time to use their visual learning style and read first and then go for it. For those guys, those are the guys who are rather, I think, who are better at measuring before cutting. They're rather, what's the how saying go? Measure once. I'd rather measure once than cut twice kind of guys. And
Right.
some guys would just
You
go
5
after it
minutes, Josh.
and they go right after it. So that's my 5 minute mark. Actually, you know what? I did want the kinesthetic group to go. I do know that they had difficulty talking about common ground just between their programs because they all teach multiple things. And sometimes, with their programs, you can't really modify what they teach because their programs deal with more safety based and you have to learn those things and you can't really modify it. So it's kind of tough and I understand that. Really quick, can everybody still see my screen?
Nope, you got to share it up again.
What happened? I thought I was already sharing. I think I got kicked out when we got kicked out earlier. Can you still hear me? Can anybody still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We just don't see your screen.
My computer's acting real slow. Crap. Yeah, I had it pulled up. I had everything set, but then when we got kicked off earlier, I think when you were trying to switch me from room to room and that share screen window that I had pulled up, I thought that was still active, but
If you want to
now I'm
throw
trying.
it in the link, I will be happy to drive for you. Throw the link to your presentation in the chat box. Whatever you'd need me to do.
Okay. All right, let me do this. All right, so I'm only gonna set this game for 3 minutes. All right, so I'm gonna try to put this in the chat. What the hell? It's all about rejoin.
What's asking you to rejoin?
I'll just send it to you in the email.
Okay.
Asking me to rejoin.
The meeting?
Yeah. And then I can't even see or hear nobody else. I can't even see myself right now.
Okay, well, no stress. No stress about this. Well, you're almost to the finish line here. You're okay. Unfortunately, I can't share from the spreadsheet because the permissions are not set. So, let me see if I can try that again. So you want to play.booklet.com? Is that what you want?
Yeah, I just emailed you. I just sent you an email from my work email.
Okay.
And it has the direct link. If you just put that link in there, they can click on that. It'll take them directly to it.
Okay. Here it is. All right. No stress. We're good. We got some time. Stuff happens. It's hard to teach virtually. Believe me, I know. All
And
right.
it's like
So the
it would
link is
happen right at
there.
the end too.
It's all good. You're all good. Go ahead. So classmates, students, the link is there. They can see it now.
Okay. So yeah, class, if you can hear me, I see Jonathan is in there. Let's just kind of get everyone to kind of join in.
Is everybody able to join on the link? I know I was. All right. So I think Josh, Coach Jay, I think we have is he frozen? Oh, he's frozen, isn't he? Stink. All right. That's really unfortunate. Okay. Now I've seen this in some of your classrooms, right? Jonathan, you've used this before. Anybody else use this tool? No? All right. Well, maybe just play around with it a little bit. Amanda says yes. Okay, so Josh might be rejoining us because I think and it's unfortunate. It just sucks when you try to teach virtually. So we're not going to ding him on that. Okay. So we can't really play because he has to start it for us, but check it out. That's a good resource for us. And we're not gonna, I'm gonna give a couple oh, Josh, are you back? If you are, you're muted. All right. Hey, so while I have you in class, I'm going to need to change the last meeting date that we have, that April 15th date, and I'm coordinating with the teachers to figure out which date it's going to be. It's either going to be that I might have two sessions, one on that Thursday, the 17th this is April, I'm talking April now, and definitely Latasha wants to do it on the 22nd. So a little bit of flexibility there. Hey, you back, Joshua? Josh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. We all kind of logged in. If you could just start the game, we could see
I
it.
started it.
Okay, and then we'll play it on our own time since we're out of time now. Is that okay? Don't
Sure.
stress about that. Okay. So, Josh, good job. I think you did a great job of walking us through and practically content, process, product, and learning environment. That was really good. I'm gonna mute you though, okay?
Okay.
So let's see. I'm going to follow up probably tomorrow with some other ideas about differentiation too. Josh did a great job of hitting those learning styles, and I'm going to provide you a little bit of more information and how to kind of view things a little bit different too. But I will be honest, and I told this to whatever group I landed in there, that all of you in your OTES 2.0 have to talk about differentiation, right? And so talking about how you differentiate from a content standpoint, process and product and learning environment, that will probably get you pretty high on the marks there, right? So take the content that he gave us tonight and be able to apply that for your write-up for OTES 2.0, and then look for me to add to that later this evening, maybe tomorrow morning. So does that make sense? Yeah, I want you all to be very successful, because I know that those formal observations are for some of you are very, very stressful, and I want to pull that down a little bit for you. Oh, so Josh has his exit ticket. Make sure you take a look, see at that. The other thing is, I tried, okay, so undergraduate students and graduate students, there has been a slight change again to the plan of study. We are swapping out issues in career technical education. If you took issues for career technical education either last spring or last summer, great, good for you, you're covered. If you did not, we are offering a specific literacy course for you guys that is going to replace issues. So I have updated the undergraduate information on the CTE resource website. I need Mpinga to do the same thing for the grads, but it's the same course. And you will get a full-fledged dedicated course just for literacy and how to teach literacy. So you know, that's a big push for the state. And I've always said all of our students need to be able to read and write, right? And so we're gonna make that switch from a program standpoint, okay? If you have questions or concerns, just email me. I'll get online with you. We'll talk, okay? I don't want anybody stressing about it. And yeah, and so I'm also teaching the summer capstone class. So if you're at the end, I don't know if any of you are at the end, I'm going to be with you, maybe unfortunately for you, but I'll get you through that process. And so, yeah. And then also, if you are going to be taking capstone this summer, meaning you're done, now is a good time to go ahead and apply to graduate. So I sent a note out about that as well. And the rest of you, if you're not there yet, that's all good. That's going to be you next year. That's all good, right? You'll be there sooner than you realize. So just wanted to make sure, since we're together, that I pointed that out. So I think that's it from an announcement standpoint. I'll shoot you an email about all of that too, so everybody's in the same note. Have an amazing spring break. I will be opening more modules over spring break so that you can finish everything out. So I've just been building this course with you, to be honest, just because I had not taught it before, and I'm trying to make sure that the content is relevant to what you need. All right. Is there any questions? Any concerns? Wayne, you got any concerns?
No, I'm good.
I'm just picking on you.
That's okay.
No,
you
you
can pick
catch
on me.
things, you work so far in advance that you catch all my mistakes. So I'm good. I'm good. Keep sending me emails telling me I'm screwing up. That's great. Keep doing it. Anybody? Anyone? Okay, so don't forget to do the exit ticket for your points for showing up tonight and participating. It's a big deal. Without you guys here, it's impossible for Josh and for Katie to teach. So thanks for coming tonight. And like I said, I'll send some additional information about differentiation tonight. All right. I'm going to hang out for a couple minutes. If you want to chit chat with me, I'm going to stop recording so I don't say anything inappropriate. Okay. I've been known to do that.